Hello there, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views magazine on American politics. Peru's President Castillo dissolved parliament just hours before an impeachment trial. Shortly thereafter, he was arrested by the police. The deposed Peruvian President Pedro Castillo has been arrested. The state news agency Andina reported on Wednesday that he was being questioned by prosecutors in the prefecture in Lima. The Congress of the South American country had previously voted to impeach Castillo. The previous vice president, Dina Boluarte, was sworn in as the new president, as required by the constitution. The lawyer is the first woman head of state in the history of the South American country. The conflict between the parliament and the government in Peru had escalated in the past few days. A kind of coup d'etat was still looming on Wednesday morning. President Pedro Castillo apparently wanted to forestall impeachment proceedings and struck out at Congress. He will temporarily dissolve parliament and set up an emergency government. That's what the head of state said in a speech on Wednesday. He also announced a new election for Congress. The parliamentarians are then supposed to draft a new constitution within 9 months. Until the new Congress begins its work, we will govern by decree, announced Castillo. The president also imposed a nationwide curfew between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. and announced a reform of the judiciary. Congress has destroyed the rule of law, democracy, and the balance between state powers, Castillo said. We call on all civil society institutions and all social groups to support the decision. On Wednesday, however, parliamentarians voted on a motion of no confidence in Castillo and deposed the president. Several investigations are underway against Castillo, including charges of interference with military and police promotions and obstruction of justice. Vice President Dina Boluarte condemned the dissolution of the Congress by the head of state. I reject Pedro Castillo's decision to bring about the collapse of the constitutional order by dissolving Congress. This is a coup that deepens the political and institutional crisis that Peruvian society must overcome in strict compliance with the law. That's what she wrote on Twitter. The opposition also spoke of a coup d'etat. He's not allowed to do what he just did. It's illegal. That's what MP Martha Moyano from the right-wing Fuerza Popular party told radio station RPP. Her party colleague Hector Ventura said, "Today the armed forces must respect the democratic order." And the MP and former Admiral José Cueto wrote on Twitter, "What Pedro Castillo has done is a coup d'etat. The armed forces will support the constitution and not the dictator." Many ministers resigned after Castillo's announcement because the rule of law has been violated, and in accordance with my democratic principles, I hereby submit by irrevocable resignation as Minister of Economy and Finance, wrote Finance Minister Kurt Boneo on Twitter. Foreign Minister Cesar Landa and Justice Minister Felix Chero also made their positions available. Attorney General Patricia Benavides said, "We strongly reject the breach of the constitutional order." Castillo's government has been under pressure since the former village school teacher took office in July last year. Because of various allegations or differences of opinion, important ministers repeatedly vacated their posts. Just 2 weeks ago, Castillo appointed a new head of cabinet, the fifth in just under 1 year and a half. The government of left-wing politician Castillo is also in a permanent power struggle with parliament. Most recently, Congress refused the head of state permission to travel to the Pacific Alliance Summit in Mexico, thereby canceling the meeting. Numerous parliamentarians are also being investigated for various allegations. The president has already survived 2 impeachment trials. 2 of Castillo's predecessors were removed from office in similar proceedings. In the U.S. state of Georgia, Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock won the runoff against Republican challenger Herschel Walker. That was reported by the television stations CNN, NBC, and other US media on Tuesday evening, based on vote counts and forecasts. President Joe Biden's Democrats are thus expanding their wafer-thin majority in the US Senate, although I'll have that topic again later in this video. Barely a month after the US congressional elections, the last vacant seat in the Senate was awarded in Georgia. In Georgia, two candidates for the US Senate faced off in a runoff after neither achieved a necessary majority in November's midterm elections. Democratic incumbent Senator from Georgia Raphael Warnock faced Republican Herschel Walker. Warnock received 49.4% of the vote in the midterm elections. Walker got 48.5%. The rest went to third candidate Chase Oliver. The election was important for the Democrats and President Joe Biden. They currently only had a wafer-thin majority because the Senate is divided and only Vice President Kamala Harris votes would help there. With Warnock remaining in office, Biden had slightly more comfortable control of one of the two chambers in the US Congress, until we come to another part of my video. The Democrats had it easier when it came to filling committees. The first half of Biden's tenure was has shown just how important the 51st Senate seat can be for Democrats. In particular, two senators from his own ranks made life difficult for Biden and blocked several of his political projects. Above all, the Democrat Joe Manchin repeatedly stood in the way and thus snubbed his own party and the president. With the 51st seat, the Democrats could no longer be slowed down, at least by Manchin alone. The stakes were just as high for former President Donald Trump. He has supported Herschel Walker, even though he hasn't been seen in Georgia for the past 2 weeks. Walker is not without controversy among Republicans. He attracted attention with statements that caused some party colleagues to frown. The former American football player described himself as 220 pounds of steel and sex appeal, praised Trump's alleged successes for the black population, and found that vampires are cool people. But he has come under pressure from allegations by two women who have accused Walker of pressuring them into having abortions after having affairs with him. This is also piquant because Walker came out as a strict anti-abortion opponent. He denies the allegations. After days of speculation, Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has chosen the first 5 members of his future government. The important economy ministry is to be headed by the ex-mayor of Sao Paulo, former education minister and 2018 presidential candidate Fernando Haddad, as Lula announced on Friday in the capital Brasilia. Haddad is assigned to the moderate wing of Lula's Labour Party PT. Parts of the financial markets in Brazil had awaited the selection of the economy minister with concern, also because of possible increases in spending on social programs. In addition to his close confidant Haddad, Lula announced Bahia Governor Rui Costa as a sort of future chancellery chief, former MP José Mucio as defense minister, former Maranhão Governor Flávio Dino as justice minister, and diplomat Mauro Vieira as foreign minister. Left-wing politician Lula prevailed in a runoff election against right-wing incumbent Jair Bolsonaro at the end of October. He was already president from the beginning of 2003 to the end of 2010. Lula's official inauguration is on January 1st. According to media reports, at least 2 other secret documents emerged during a search of a storage room in the state of Florida used by former US President Donald Trump. A team hired by Trump himself made the find. That's what the Washington Post and the US broadcaster CNN reported, citing informants familiar with the matter. The documents, which were not described in detail, were handed over to the federal police FBI. Representatives of official authorities were not present at the actions. Trump's team examined the storage room as part of a larger search of several Republican properties, it said. Trump had previously been asked to comment on whether he had given the FBI all documents classified as confidential, secret, or top secret. The background is the dispute over the handling of government documents that has been going on for months. On August 8th, the FBI searched Trump's private estate Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach in Florida and confiscated documents with the notes secret and top secret, among other things, from his tenure. Prior to that, the National Archives, which is responsible for storing presidential records, had been trying for months to get Trump's papers. By storing the papers at his home, he could have been committing a crime. The investigation is also about the allegations of obstruction of justice. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, the majority of Democrats in the US Senate has shrunk again. Senator Kyrsten Sinema has left the party and wants to vote independently in the future. That means that US Senator Kyrsten Sinema has announced her withdrawal from the Democratic Party and wants to act as an independent politician in the near future. And this could change the majority in the House of not in the House of Representatives, in the Senate. Party politics is too focused on harming the other side instead of doing work for US citizens, is what the senator wrote in an opinion piece in the Arizona Republic newspaper from her home state on Friday. Therefore, I join the growing number of people in Arizona who reject partisan politics in declaring my independence from Washington's broken party system. It initially remained unclear to what extent the voting behavior of the centrist Sinema, which had repeatedly blocked legislative projects of the Democrats in the past, could change. However, she told the Politico website, "Nothing will change in my values and my behavior." With Bernie Sanders and Angus King, there are already two independent senators who, however, usually vote with the Democrats and are therefore attributed to them. Just a few days ago, Democrat Raphael Warnock in the state of Georgia, as I said, won the runoff election for the last open Senate seat after the US midterm elections. And that gave the Democrats a 51-49 majority over the Republicans and more voting flexibility. It was initially unclear to what extent this dynamic could now change. Sinema is expected to maintain ties with the Democrats in order not to lose committee seats, among other things. As an independent, however, it should be much easier for her to evade the factional discipline of the Democrats. The United States government is providing Ukraine with additional military aid worth $275 million to ward off the Russian war of aggression. The Pentagon announced on Friday that the package would include US HIMARS multiple rocket launchers, anti-drone equipment, medical equipment, and generators. The support comes from US stocks. US military support for Kiev has totaled $20 billion since US President Joe Biden took office in early 2021, according to the Pentagon. In recent months, the Americans have sent out various packages in rapid succession, often from US military stocks. The Republicans, who will control the House of Representatives with a small majority from January, have already signaled that they want to put the brakes on this aid funding. The import tariffs on steel and aluminum imposed by the USA in 2018 were legal according to the verdict of the dispute arbitrators at the World Trade Organization, the WTO. According to the judgment published on Friday evening, the government of then-President Donald Trump violated WTO requirements. Plaintiffs were China, Norway, Switzerland, and Turkey. The EU had also initially filed a lawsuit against the USA at the WTO because of the tariffs, but then let the case rest. At the time, the United States had imposed tariffs of up to 25%. They justified this by saying that imports threatened the country's national security. Because under the rules of the WTO and its predecessor, the GATT, countries have the right to suspend trade concessions such as duty-free imports without further justification in order to protect their national security. The US government took the view that the WTO dispute settlement should not deal with the issue at all. The judges rejected that. It must be examined objectively whether a government's reason for imposing measures to protect national security are covered by WTO rules. And this was not the case. Countries that win WTO dispute settlements are entitled to compensation to the extent that they have been harmed by, and they have to put it objectively. However, the US can formally appeal. Because Washington has been blocking the appointment of new appointments to the appellate body for years, appointment negotiations cannot take place at the moment. The case then remains unsolved. So it's quite complicated there. Trump messed up a lot, not only in his own country, but also at the WTO. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.